Good, awesome. Well, if you just jumped on, welcome. I'm Josh Krenz with North Central Highland Cattle Association. I'm gonna serve a little bit as your moderator tonight, but we've got several other people that are on our North Central Sale Committee, along with myself, that are also on tonight. And I see lots of other names and faces, which is great, as well. And tonight the objective is to learn from each other. So we're not going to talk at you. We've got a couple slides here for some things where it's easier to see things visually, and we'll poke around on some websites and do a couple things like that as well. But really, we want to create interaction as much as we can. There's a lot of people here just going through the names. I see several people who have consigned before, both at the North Central sale as well as other regional sales, and some I see even have participated on the national sale. So we've got great experience with the people here that are on the team's call so far. So if you got something to say, unmute. I'll try to call on you so we can not have mass chaos. But we want to get as many people participating as you can. And if you're new to Zoom, one of the cool features as well is you can actually go and hit the button to raise your hand. So if you want to do that as well, if you're one of those that you don't want to interrupt somebody or whatever, just hit the raise your hand feature, and we'll try to see that feature as well, so we can go ahead and call on people from that aspect. So we're gonna go ahead and get going then. So the first slide here that Ginny's got up, like I said, this isn't a death by PowerPoint. We only got a couple slides. Just this is kind of our task for tonight. Um, and certainly this is just a guideline to kind of keep us on track, but we can go down bunny trails if we need to. If somebody has a specific question or an idea or topic that is related to the success of preparing cattle for regional auction, we certainly want to make sure that we address as many of those questions as we can tonight. And so this is our kind of our topic. So as we get going, you know, the first thing that people always have to ask themselves is how do you make that decision to consign, right? So there's lots of folks that have that. I'll just, having consigned before at previous sales, from our aspect, our farm, Woodland Flats in Minnesota, it's part of our overall marketing plan for the year. It's how we reach new farms. It's how we try to gauge the value of our cattle. That's part of the reasons that we make that decision to consign. And we would rather, consign and support a regional sale or the national sale. We do both from that aspect than to just, and from our standpoint, than to sell privately everything. So we do sell private a lot of things, but it's our way to help support the other associations and national as well from that aspect. But there's other people on here who have evaluated the decision to consign and looked at it, and there's other factors. Does anybody else want to jump in as to what some of the things are that they look at when they decide if they're going to consign or to consign? I'll start calling on people too if I need to.
I'm raising my hand instead of using the
Oh,
right.
instead of hitting the button, I can still
Yeah.
see that too, Randy. You're good.
Okay. Well, we have been consigning with the North Central Sale since they started. A lot of our motivation is supporting the association. The association started having, North Central started having these to provide an outlet, a sale outlet for our members. And so we've taken advantage of that. And when we bring an animal to the sale, we try to bring some of our best to show off our farm. And it is for us a way to get our name out there. It also gives us a sense of pricing and how does the market value our animals. So we do it for a multiple of reasons, but that's our main reason is to get our name out there and also just to support the association. We bring animals out to Denver and have for several years as well. And there, our motivation is to pay for the trip. So part of the reason we do that is to, make sure that we're coming home not in the hole. So,
That's usually pretty good reason, Randy. So yeah. No, that's great. Anybody else have any other reasons why? And even if you haven't consigned at a sale before, as you're going through and evaluating the decision to consign, you're on this call already, so you've started to process and started to think about that. Is there any other reasons that would decide that they want to consign? You have to hit the unmute button though if you're just going to say something. So. So one of the other things, so Randy touched on this, but and this we'll get into this in marketing and stuff below as well. But it's interesting. So if you take last year's North Central sale in the fall as an example, we sold 10 heifers on that sale. And you could say, well, is that a good sale or is that a bad sale? It doesn't matter how many animals that you have on a sale. What I would tell you is to ask the consigners who consigned on that sale how many they sold after that sale. So because a lot of the marketing and the components that go into that to get your farm name out there to showcase your genetics, as Randy was saying, it's a good way to kind of gauge your price and what an average could be from your farm as well as other farms. But we sell personally from our farm, we sell a lot more animals because we had animals on the sale than than more than the lots that we actually had on the sale, if that makes sense. So, and it should because we had a lot more animals to sell at home too. So, but it's a great way to get to let people get our farm name out there. So one of the other things then when we start to get into that is determining what to consign. Um, so Randy hit on something earlier as she talked about, consigning, their best, right? And that's what someone told me a long time ago is when you're selling, whether it's on an auction or whether it's off your farm, everything is a reflection of you, right? Your farm, your breeding. And so an auction is it's amplified because of all the marketing that goes into that. We're going to talk about that a little bit more here in a second. And when we talk about photos and videos, but everything's amplified in an auction in what I would consider a positive way. It's an opportunity to showcase those genetics off of your farm. And whether you're just getting started and those genetics are you bought a bull from one farm and you bought a female from a different farm and you're selling offspring from that offspring is still your farm name. And so it's an opportunity for you to help build off of that and help build that brand for your farm. So when determining what to consign, so you got to consider a couple different factors. The first thing I always look at is which sale am I selling on? So if I'm selling on, in this case, North Central or Regional, I start to think about, well, who are the
It's muted,
audiences
right?
of folks that are bidding on a regional sale, right? So is it North Central members? Is it outside of North Central? North Central sale historically, the last couple of years, has sold a lot of cattle outside of the North Central region. So our traditional North Central region. So you're getting buyers all across the US. So I would call these regional sales, whether it's North Central, whether it's the Maha sale that they've got coming up here in August, whether it's the Northwest sale that the Northwest Highland Cattle Association has, or whether it's the regional or the national sale out in Denver, all of those sales now have a national scope. They all have bidders from across the US. And so when you're considering your audience, your cattle could really go anywhere. But how you determine and choose which cattle come from your farm may determine where they could possibly go and how you position and how you market them and that as well and how you explain those animals. So that's the first thing I always have to think about is where are these animals going to go? The second thing that I think about was something that Randy touched on was the quality. So I'm trying to, from our farm, we're trying to showcase certain genetic lines, right? So it might be a certain bull that we're focused on. So maybe, one way to do that is to have two females out of that same bull versus having, two females with two different bulls, because that might be something that we're trying to focus on as we're determining to consign. Same thing could be said on the dam side. If you had, a dam that had multiple, if you had a yearling and a 2-year old that you're trying to sell or something that were out of the same dam. So you could pair things up, might be another reason that you want to do it. Um, One of the things that when you're starting to look at when you're thinking about a sale is if you're putting your best animals on that sale and showcasing your farm and getting your name out there, then those animals reflect the rest of the animals you have available when those customers come, right? So it's that you're setting that bar, for what those customers should expect. So what I mean by that is the animals should be good, but they should also be a good representation of the type of animal that you want to represent your farm. And everybody's definition of good in breeding is different in our breed, right? There's different characteristics that we have from a Highland standpoint. We want good functional cattle, but some people might be breeding for certain characteristics. For example, like if you're a grass-fed operation, you might want to focus on, an animal that functions really well and is highly successful in a grass-fed operation, and that's what you want to focus on selling. And if you're not grass fed, maybe it's a different functionality. But those are some of the things you got to think about is those animals that you consign, you want them to be a reflection of your farm as well. I would not encourage you to think of a sale as a way to dump the animals that you really want to keep yourself. There are plenty of sellers out there, right? And everybody has a definition of what is good and what is keep and what they should keep on their farm. But that's something that's, keep in mind that if you wouldn't want to buy it back yourself, you might want to consider uh, in a public sale, in a regional sale, a national sale of some sort, of taking a look at, an animal that better represents your farm from that aspect. Anybody else have anything that to add on that? I know, and it can be we're talking about animals here a little bit, but on regional cells we also have semen lots, embryo lots, those things. Those are same type of considerations. Any questions so far? Answers? You guys can jump in if you have a thought. So another thing, when you're determining, what to consign is to start to look at age groups of animals, start to look at, whether you want a younger animal, does the animal have to travel? Where's it going to? Is it a bred animal? Is it going to be bred in time around the constraints? Cow-calf pair, you want to make sure that the calf is old enough to be able to travel. Those are some what I call common sense logistical things, but those are certainly things you have to think about as well when you're looking at a sale. And the sales vary too, right? So North Central sale is an in-person sale, like the Maha sale that's coming up. Um, that one is an online sale. And there's all kinds of sales, everything in between. So logistics is something else to consider as well for those animals and determining. So another thing that we have to start to look at when we look at these sales is health requirements. And I'm gonna go ahead and share here. I think it might kick you off, Jenny. We'll find out. Um, eh, but we've got North Central has a set of health requirements, but it's similar to other sales as well. In fact, that's how we got ours in the first place. So while I'm looking for that, I'm gonna let Randy talk about health requirements here a little bit.
Um, if you haven't sold before, looking at the health requirements can be fairly intimidating. I think the main thing to keep in mind is that your vet is going to know how to handle this. When you look at sale requirements like the ones that we would have for North Central, for a live sale is likely going to be a lot different from what you might need for an online sale. But what the sale has in mind when they're putting these together is to be in a situation at a live sale where the buyer can just load an animal up and take it home. So they try to be prepared for health requirements that will work for transporting an animal into most states. If you are going to a live sale, in addition to the health requirements that are for the sale itself, if you're going into another state, there may be other requirements beyond what would be listed in the health requirements for the sale. So you do need to depend on your vet. The sale may have requirements to certify things like commonly if there's a sale where you can sell bulls, they're going to require you to have a bull soundness exam. And if you're trying to sell a bred cow, they probably are going to request that you have a vet certify that they're bred. But regardless of the sale, they should have something that you can give to your vet, like this one that is on the screen now is the one for the upcoming sale in North Central this fall, that you should be able to, you can download it from our website and email it to your vet or hand it to your vet so that they know exactly what you need. But the biggest thing to be aware of is timing is very important. In order to issue that CVI or the veterinary inspection certificate, the vet has to observe the animal within 14 days of issuing that certificate, and then the certificate's good for 30 days. So you have to make sure you time things within that, with that in mind. They always require an inspection by a vet, and most will require some tests. And the tests, some can take a while to get results. So depending on your vet and where you're located, it might take a week, it might take more than a week to get some of those results back. Some tests take more than one visit. So for example, if you have tuberculosis, like we have as a requirement for the North Central live sale, that takes 2 visits. So you need to plan ahead. Also, not all vets will be able to do all inspections. For example, not all vets are going to be willing to do a bull soundness exam. So you might have to find a vet that will do that for a sale if you're going to bring a bull. Also, some sales require that you send the stuff in ahead of time. So, for example, when we have had bull sales, we've required the bull soundness test come in ahead of time. Denver wants you to send in the full CVI in advance of the sale to email ahead of time. So the main thing is you want to talk to your vet fairly early to get on their schedule and make sure they know where the sale is going to be and what the requirements are, and they should help you get through that. But you don't want to wait until 2 days before the sale because you may not be able to comply with the health requirements. So once you've got your CVI from the vet, when you go to the sale, you should bring copies, paper copies, because at a live sale, they'll want to be able to take that CVI and give it to the new buyer, but also the vet at the sale could be writing a new CVI to go to the location wherever the buyer is located. So another thing to keep in mind, sometimes at the sales, the buyers aren't able to get transport right away and you have to take the animal back home. And in that case, depending on where they're going and how soon they can arrange transport, you might end up having to do a second CVI. So typically in the sales, the cost of getting that veterinary inspection rests with the seller. So depending on where you are and how long it takes your vet to get these things done, it can cost $100 or $200 depending on how many times they have to visit. Um, So
And
are there
I,
any questions? I think the CVI or the health requirements are really intimidating when you look at them, especially the ones in Denver, because they're pages long. Um,
Josh, I just would add, and it kind of goes back to determining what to consign. Um, the health requirements for Denver may determine what you can consign from the perspective of brucellosis vaccinations. So we were in New York, the Ledyard never vaccinated the Highland cattle. Um, we didn't right away. We are now because I realized that we have heifers now and or cows that could not be sold in the Denver sale because they're not brucellosis vaccinated. So just something to think about if your goal is to sell in Denver and you're not brucellosis vaccinating, then, and I looked it up just now on my phone because I thought about it earlier and so anywhere else that we go, because now we were New York, we're now Wisconsin, from the perspective of showing or anything like that, we don't have to have a vaccination, but the Denver sale you do. So just something to think about, that it we weren't ready to sell anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but we're getting there.
That was
yeah,
the
no,
advice we got very early, was to bangs vaccinate all your heifers if you were planning to be traveling around to shows and trying to sell to different places. So we started doing that right away.
yeah. No, that's a good point, Jenny. Thanks for bringing that up. And one thing I just point out here on the CVI, the health certificate, the top thing on the screen here is you get all these other tests and things, and like Randy said, your veterinarian can test for most of these. The one that gets that not all veterinarians do is a bull soundness usually
Mhm.
for bulls, but all the rest of these are simple blood tests for the most part, or vaccine. So, so from that aspect, your veterinarian can do it. The thing people sometimes get caught up on it, that this health certificate themselves, and Randy mentioned it, which cued a point in my head, is health certificates are actually required every time your animal goes out of state. And so if you're selling cattle today and they're not on a sale, and if they're going out of state, you're required by law to have health certificates for them unless they're going to slaughter. So that's just something to keep in mind, because I know there's a lot of people that don't realize that that's one of their responsibilities as a seller, is to make sure that those animals are certified. And some people put it on the point of the buyer to pay for that when they do it privately. Usually when we do regional sales, we ask the seller to take care of that, as we do here with the requirements of North Central, that it's taken care of up front. And then we also have a veterinarian on site, as Randy mentioned, if those cattle have to go out of state to their new buyer's home, that they'll have a health certificate. So it's something to be thinking about. Regardless, it should not be anything that would be a surprise or an intimidation if you're doing a regional sale, because you should already be doing if you're sending cattle out of state. Questions, comments, anything on health requirements anybody has? All right. Um, so the next thing um, that we had on our list was to talk about was writing a sale advertisement. So there's kind of a chronological, you know, uh, order to this as we think about, so first you have to decide if you're going to consign, then you decide what to consign. Then you start to think about, okay, what are the health components of this, which also helps determine what you're going to consign. And then the next component of that is to start to get into the nitty gritty when we get into the advertising and the marketing part of it. And so when we start to think about that and the advertising marketing part of it, the part that I always what regional associations I think do a pretty good job, and North Central does when we lay out the website, which, oh, by the way, Randy puts a lot of work into that. We appreciate all of her time and laying that out, is when you look at the lots, it'll list the animal and it'll list usually their dam and sire and it'll give you birth date. So it'll give you some general information. And then usually on these sales, you're confined to a certain amount of marketing words. Like North Central, it's 100 words. The National, it's 100 words. So you're limited. So my first piece of advice always for people when you're starting to write an ad for a sale is don't repeat what's already there, right? So I see lots of ads where people will pop up and it'll say, oh, the name of my cow is Fluffy. So we're selling Fluffy. In this case, Fluffy is actually when if you were to spell out her whole name, it's unneeded because we already have that. We already know Fluffy is the name of the animal. So there's things like that, or things like here, I'll show you. It'll be easier. So you pop up here. These are some lots. These are semen lots, so bear with me. But these are examples, and I'm gonna pick on them all. So if you're one of the people that wrote on here and you want to defend what you had, this is your chance because I said everybody can talk. Um, but as you go through this, and you think about an ad, first thing, disclaimer, we have people on the sale committee that'll help you edit your ads, right? If you want us to. So if you say, hey, I need help, we will help you. So, don't think like if you're first time consigner and you're going to consign, you're like, oh, I'm on this all on my own. I don't know what to do. Start the basics and we'll help you. And if there's coaching, we'll help you as well. But that's part of what this tonight is to go through here. So the first one here, lot number one, goes straight into talking about, we're digging into our personal inventory. It does mention the animal's name there and who it is and so forth. And then it starts to highlight like what are the important things about this animal. I had high selling female in Denver. Has some other great things. But what you want to do in this area is you want to explain to people what they can't find out on their own, right? So they can get the name, they can get the date of birth, they can get the color, all those types of components out of the sale ad normally, but they can't get some of these other anecdotal things that you would get. So like on this one here, it says he was the Mountain States Grand Champion Bull. Well, you won't be able to look that up and know what that is. So that's cool. So put that in there. I really like in here that they talk about structure. They talk about large frame, what it is to them. Um, they're starting to define what the animal looks like a little bit. You start to get into some of these other ones. You start to talk about, like who the sire is and dam. And this doesn't show it here because this is the sale catalog. But if you go on the North Central site, it would actually show the sire and dam of these bulls from that aspect. This one's is interesting because it gets right into talking about the potential. And so I think that's one of the things that's good about this ad is it talks about the unique makeup of this animal, the youthfulness. So you're starting to try to paint a picture for people of why would they want this animal? In this case, it was genetics. Why did they want those genetics in their fold, in their herd? So those are the things to start to consider when you're writing the ad is you have 100 words to tell people something they don't know about your animal. And what's unique about it, you get to sell the pedigree without talking about the pedigree. Tell them things that, if it's a cow, tell them what their offspring have looked like. If it's a bull, tell them what their offspring have looked like. If it's a yearling and, so it's only 9 months old or 12 months old, we don't have a lot of history on it. Talk about the mother and dam, the mother, the dam, the sire, talk about a sibling. Those types of things are good ways that you can start to look at what a good ad what might look like. And a good ad is different to all people. When you start to look at some of those ads for trying to draw attention, this is a sale where everybody's already the North Central in this case is already drawing everybody to the sale. So it's not like a classified ad in a newspaper where you're competing with a lot of different things that are different. For those of us that remember classified ads, those are, I just aged myself, right? But I don't know if there's even newspapers anymore. But anyways, so but if you start to look at, the North Central, like all the lots are going to be on there, people are going to be looking at what's different about that animal. Why would they want to bring that animal home? And going back to what I said earlier, start to think of yourself as the buyer. Why would you want to bring that female back home again? Why would you want to do that? So, Holly, I know you write a lot of these types of things. What do you think about when you're writing a sale ad?
Um, I guess the first thing I always kind of make it the same general stages. I start with basic info, and then I work into sire and dam, and then like you mentioned before, talking about certain things that people might not know just by going on the ACA website and seeing their pedigree. Things about the sire and dam that you really like, tributes that you see in their genetics that you appreciate and why you're selling this animal that you want to market for your farm.
Right on. I can't tell. I can see the top of the head. Is it Jim or is it Bert? I can't tell. You have to put it down.
I like to hide. It's Bert.
Hey Bert. Hi. Usually when I'm on like the beef marketing calls, it'll still say Bert, but it's
Yeah,
Jim
but
because
it's
he
Jim.
uses your thing. So Bert, I know you guys have consigned animals to Maha and stuff before. What do you do when you write the ads?
Um, for us, since we're a grass-fed beef operation, we can't always compete with a lot of show animals. Casey shows, but she shows the animals we raise, so she's a little bit um at a disadvantage there. But temperament is a huge thing for Jim and I. It's us and Casey, and we do all the work, and we can't have crazy animals. So the first thing, Casey, our granddaughter, breaks all our heifers, and she's actually the ones that picks them out. These are the ones that have the best temperaments. She'll pick out the ones she thinks we need to keep, and then she picks out the best ones that she feels temperament, and she shows them in a couple of shows before they go. But I think temperament is a huge thing for us.
And that's perfect. What you just said is, kind of how you're defining yourself and marketing yourself or your farm, and temperament is huge for a lot of Highland breeders. And you just also talked about what you can compete on, right?
Right.
You're not going to compete against, someone who's taking their animal around and showing it. That's not what you're going for. And that's not the audience that you're looking for, maybe doesn't even care about the show type stuff, right? But what they might care about is that they have a granddaughter at home, just like Casey, that, can handle these animals, that they're docile, that their halter broke, those types of things. Those are important to buyers as well.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think especially with these online sales as they're growing in popularity, to really just find the tributes to these animals that you're consigning that, people can't see by looking at a picture, putting those things in the description.
Good. Good point, Holly. So, Randy, yes, thank you for raising
I
your
think
hand.
another thing to keep in mind is that, especially when you have a lot of online sales, is to make sure you disclose things so a buyer wouldn't be surprised. So let's say, for example, you have a heifer that broke a horn when they were, a calf, and so the horn's a little crooked. That's something that may not show particularly in a picture, and it may not even be all that noticeable, but just so that your full disclosure with the folks that are buying, because you don't want somebody to buy an animal from you and then be disappointed. So you want to make sure that if there is anything to be concerned about or anything that might be a flaw, you would want to be sure to include that description in your description.
Good. Good point. Awesome. Um, Any questions on that, or we're gonna keep moving on? We're gonna talk about videos and photos because we've got. Okay, so Jenny, I'm gonna let you share your screen again.
Yep.
And when Jenny gets that up, I'm gonna let her talk about photos, videos, and if there's anybody on here's, like I said, got experience in doing some things, hop in, talk about it. That's what we're doing. We're trying to share as a group. So go ahead, Jenny.
Okay, oh, can you see the screen?
Yep, we're on the first slide.
Okay. So I'll start with saying that I pulled some pictures. Most of these came from either the National Sale book or pictures that have been submitted to North Central. I've got a couple that are of ours. Um, I'm not, there are some, as we move through this, there are some pictures where I'm going to say this is not what you should do. It's not to offend anyone. I've tried to just kind of clip out what, what I'm talking about. And again, this is all for learning. Um, so some people, choose to have a professional take the pictures of their consignment. So these are examples of pick cattle and or bulls who either their semen or the bull themselves have been in a national sale. As you can see, they've been fitted. It's a professional photographer that has taken the pictures. It's a choice of the consigner of how much and what extent you want to go when you're doing, submitting pictures or you're preparing to submit the pictures, to get either if you want to have a professional photographer come out to your farm, take a picture. But these are some examples of some really nicely prepared animals for the sale. Some people use backdrop pictures, and these are pictures that I have in our file. So an easy thing with backdrop pictures is the animals are already prepared for the show. And so you don't have to do a lot of effort to get that picture, which that one I have really, she's not really that quite that long at that age, but the picture's kind of stretched out. But the point is, you're at the show, you've done the work. Whether the animal wins or doesn't, and if you're at a show, take that backdrop picture, take that picture. And I will say my family sometimes gets mad at
Oh no, we lost Jenny. So we heard the part of sometimes her family gets mad at her. So she went to the next picture. So I'll narrate for Jenny if she didn't come back. Okay,
Oh,
so there you're back now.
okay. Sorry, I didn't realize it. Yeah. So
You were
sometimes I get
gone.
mad because I make us take backdrop pictures of maybe something that did not win their class. But the heifer, the cow looks good, and we never know when we might want that picture. So these are examples again of cattle that have been washed and clipped for their picture. And very nice pictures. You can see the feet and legs, even though both of these I believe look like they're taken in the winter, but they're not standing in so much snow that you can't see the set to the leg or anything like that. So very good pictures. Some consigners don't have the ability, myself being one of them. We don't clip, we hire someone to clip. But these are two really good pictures in that they've washed the cattle, they've brushed the cattle, they've blown the hair out. Again, important things is that you can see the animal, and I'm going to have some pictures later, but especially the picture on the right, you can see the depth of heel on that heifer. You can see the set to the leg on both heifers, and their depth of body, etc. And they're presented very nicely, even though they chose maybe not to clip them and fit them, but they're clean. The hair is brushed, blown out, and they look really nice.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that we don't, our region, and I'm not sure that any region has ever made any requirements around like clipping an animal or washing an animal, right? But and really the animal should reflect how you want your farm to reflect. So if you don't want to clip animals, it's okay. There's nothing that says you have to clip an animal. But to the pictures that Jenny was just showing, even if you're not going to clip an animal, you need to present it as best as possible, which means that you're not doing the things that Jenny's going to talk about here now.
Right. So these are some pictures again that I've pulled from our North Central sales in the past. So couple things with the picture on the left. There's multiple animals in the picture. Now I will say again, I clipped it out because I'm trying to be as conspicuous as I can, and the whole animal, you can tell in the full picture which animal is the sale animal. But really, I think that you should focus and only have the animal that is being consigned, not parts of other animals in your background. Another important thing I feel is where you're taking this picture. So I would say this is in a dry lot, in a pasture. Obviously, it's muddy, and we can't always avoid that, but it's important to make your animal look the best it can. In this picture, I can't tell what the legs are on this heifer. I can't tell what the feet look like. And so a lot of things that need, in my opinion, should be improved on if you're going to sell that animal. The next picture is pretty good from the perspective of seeing feet and legs, seeing the length of body, but really not, my opinion, much effort put into the hair to brush it or, present it to its best for you to represent your farm. Couple other ones, again, the one on the left, obviously the cow is very dirty. You should wash your animal, wash the manure or the mud off before taking the picture. I just think that if you're representing your farm, you would want that animal to be clean when you're putting that picture. And especially, I was in Holstein Association forever and worked for the Holstein Association. And so we selected cattle for sales, but at that point it was all live auction. So even though we had some pictures in the sale catalog, people came to the sale and they saw the animal. That's not what happens for the most part. It does at Denver, if you're at Denver. But now that we have so much of it online, or even if the cattle are live, it's online bidders, they're not going to see the animals in the lineup at Denver. They're going to see the picture that is on our website or the picture that is in the sale catalog. So it's important that you present your animal to their best ability. The next one, this picture is if I showed the whole picture, it's a nice picture of the calf, but you can't see anything from the knees down or the hocks down. So I'm a foot and leg person, and I would have a real hard time with that, buying that animal online with that picture, because I can't tell if it can walk or it can't walk. So just something to keep in mind when you're taking pictures out in the field. Be sure that where you are, you can see all of the structure of the animal. Randy, go ahead.
Can you go back just to any of before you go to videos, go back to pictures? Because I do the website, I get all these pictures coming in, and if you're not a person that shows, you go back one more. You might not necessarily be aware that this would be the best way to present your animal, is the way people have their animals posed at the show, because it shows them off in the best way. So the best pictures would be an animal looking like this, looking to the right, like they are in a show, with their front legs together and their back legs with the farther away leg a little bit forward. So for people that show all the time, that's, they just know that, but for people that aren't showing, they may not. And so there's a reason that people pose their animals like this at shows. It's because it shows them off well. And we get lots of pictures that they're all different ways, but this would be the ideal photo. And if you look at the Denver catalog, I think they kind of say this is what your photo should look like. They should be facing to the right and, just one animal in there. So that was all I wanted to add.
I see
That's a
Holly's
really good
hand up.
point.
Yeah, just to build off of what Randy was saying, these two photos are a really good example of that. I would say as far as like the angle of the photo, I think that's also another good thing to consider, just so everything looks proportional on the animal. With these two pictures, I'm instantly gravitated more towards the animal on the left, more so just because it looks more proportional. You can tell where the person was taking this picture was at the center of this animal, whereas the animal on the right, they were a little closer to the shoulder. And it doesn't necessarily distort the animal, but it definitely changes, I think, the build of it a little bit, or what people can and cannot see. Another thing that is really nice about these pictures is your background. You never want a lot of things going on in the back of your pictures. Everything is pretty consistent, everything's pretty clean. Those are all things to consider for your backdrop when you're taking sale photos.
And the other thing I was going to point out on this page is these animals are standing really nice. They have their heads up in the air because they have a halter. But I've seen people stand out in their pasture and take really nice pictures of animals that'll naturally stand like this. Cows
Yep.
will move. The head maybe, you might have to like whistle or something, or throw a hat in there or whatever to get cows to kind of perk up and move their head away. Because that head up in the air helps make that shoulder look good. It makes that whole top line come back and look more smooth than a cow that's head is down and grazing. So don't feel like, everything that we have here is on a halter. It doesn't have to be. You can take really good pictures of cattle out on pasture. It might take longer and you have to be patient for that animal to stop and step. But a cow standing in that natural position, really like the one on the left is kind of standing a little bit more natural when I look at her. Um, that's going to show off your best animal when you start to look at that. But getting a side profile and get started, all the things that Jenny was talking about with the feet and legs is a great place to be. And this is just like anything else in the world. The more times you go out and look at your cows and look at them from a side profile, and think about it and take a picture with your phone when you're not trying to rush to take one for a show or sale or something like that, the better you're going to get at it, because it's about building that eye for understanding when your animal is in the best possible position that it can stand. Okay, Jenny.
Okay, we're gonna see if videos will work. And I'm not feeling warm and fuzzy about it because I don't have, oh, there we go. Okay. So this is a video actually of at our place. And I just happened to be out in the pasture and we were thinking about putting some embryos in a sale out of this cow. And she was walking away from me and we also had a video, we did a video when she was, being led. But naturally, you can see the width of this cow. You can see her feet and legs. You can see how she tracks as she makes her way in the pasture. There standing with her head up pretty much, but then she figured out I was behind her and she needed to look at me. But you can see from the side how deep she is, how long she is. So I'm not saying this is a great video, but I do think for this cow, it shows you what kind of cow she is. And I'll let anybody else if they want to make any comments, but
Yeah, I agree. It's a super nice video. My one, I guess, critique would be is that generally, if you're going to record on a phone, the landscape way sideways, right, instead of
gotcha.
upright. Yeah. Just because most times our sales upload, the videos to YouTube, and then you can get the full screen video of the or as you're watching it, versus if it's upright and on YouTube, then it I don't know, distorts the image a
Narrow
little.
like this, right?
Yeah, yeah, and the same goes for pictures too. When you're submitting sale photos, um, take pictures with your phone sideways instead of upright. Um, that ratio and that sizing seems to just work so much better versus the upright way. And then those pictures end up having to be cropped, and some of them get distorted. So
Thank you. That's I never thought about that.
yeah.
This is why
Okay,
we're having a group discussion, Jenny.
right, right. Okay, so I have one more video. Oh, let me go to the next screen. Let's see. Okay, there we go. And let's do this. It's spinning kind of slow. Come on.
Well, the first thing is it's the direction that Holly said. So it's
Right.
that landscape.
And it's on a halter, and hopefully it will pick up, and there we go.
Yeah.
You can see it's walking naturally. It's on a halter. And as we go through the video, you can see how well she walks, how well she tracks her hind legs. And in a minute, you're going to be able to see her front end too. So you can see the width between her front legs and the boldness of her rib and things like that, which you don't see that so much in the profile picture, but when that heifer was coming at you, you could see the rib. So I think those are important things, again, in these online sales, because the people aren't going to be able to see the animal. And the videos help show more of the animal than just the profile picture.
Yeah. Through all the years observing regional sales and even national sale, having a video increases the value that the animal sells for over and over and over again. So because people truly know what they're getting, and again, they can walk and all the things that you were just talking about, Jenny, and I was just going to point out that when this animal first started walking, they weren't holding it like they weren't leading it like you're at a show where you're standing next to it. They were out in front, which allowed the animal to move more naturally. It's a great way to also show how docile the animal is for the people that are selling on part of that temperament and personality component as well.
And Josh or anybody, as far as like length of video goes, I mean, doesn't the Denver, isn't their video max like 45 seconds or something like that? Like an ideal video length is maybe like 30 to 60 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really, when you think about it, when people are looking at videos, and we all do this when we're looking, none of us are sitting and scrolling TikTok anymore or anything like that. But when you're looking at stuff, you tend to look at things for, 20, 30 seconds, right? You're not looking at things for 3 minutes like we used to. Those days are gone. So Holly's absolutely right, so, you want a 30 to 45-second video, and ideally you want something like this where you're getting the three angles. You're getting the side profile walk, you're getting the front profile walk, and you're getting that back profile walk. We don't need to see the foreside because the sides should be the same, right? But you should be able to see those three. And so if you're running 10 seconds 15 seconds on each side. If you can't tell how an animal's moving in that 10 to 15 seconds, if your animal's just like stopping and standing, like if it's not moving, you should take another video. Your video should just be that animal in movement. That's the whole point of the video. Good. Any questions on videos, photos, comments? Anybody have another thought? Okay. Thanks, Jenny. The next couple of things that we had to talk about was the benefits of consigning. And when we get into the benefits of consigning, there's a couple different areas that falls under, and some of these have been mentioned already. So marketing is one of them, right? So I mentioned earlier, and Randy alluded to it as well, that we sell a lot more animals off the farm than we sell at these sales. So it's a way to build up your farm name, your reputation. And like I said earlier, I mean, it might be the first animal you've ever had with your farm name on it. And if you've got, good farms that, are behind that with the siren dam, and you put that animal out there for people to see, people will see the types of genetics that you're using, how you're building your farm name up. It doesn't matter that it's your first animal. It has all those other genetics to back up. That's the beauty of raising registered cattle, as we all know where they come from. But you got to start to get your cattle out there to start to build that reputation if marketing is one of your goals for your farm. It's a way to reach new audiences. So, a lot of the regional sales, like I talked about, cattle are going all over, right? It used to be when we were at the first regional North Central sale 8 years ago, all of those animals that were sold stayed in Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota. I think maybe Iowa, maybe one animal went to Iowa the first year. That was like an export. Whoa, we're selling animals to Iowa. And so that's not how the world works today. We got a lot of transporters in this breed. We got breeders all over the US. We need diversifications. People are trying to diversify and get different cattle from different places. So it's a great way to reach those new audiences to get on that map otherwise. And we talked about promoting your farm as well. And I wanted to pop up here and just share. This one will share for me. So what I've popped up here is the North Central Sale website. So if you've never been on the website before, it's highlandsale.org. North Central decided a long time ago to build a website just dedicated to the North Central sales. And so that's what this site is. So it's a sister site to the North Central website. And so once you get on here, the cool thing about, when you go on here and buy and you start to go and click on things like results, um, and you start to go and you click on one of these links that look at the results, it has the lists of all of the animals. It has the lists of all the consigners. It has the sale prices on there. So now your animals get to start to be part of this database, which Google loves because Google searches all these websites. And when people do a search on Highland cattle, your farm is now part of the search criteria, right? As you get going. So those are all things, when you consign to regional sale, you get to be part of all of that marketing, whether it's on websites, whether it's on social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram. Those are probably the big ones that the regionals use. You're now part of all of those different components. You get to be promoted in the emails that go out about the sale, all of those different things. So check it out. If you haven't checked out the highlandsale.org website, you can see what some of the marketing is that's offered from that aspect.
And Josh,
Yep.
can I talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
When
go
we
ahead.
do have consignments, we will have information on all the consignments, pictures, videos will be here. Your description will have links to their pedigrees. we will post more than just the one picture. If, typically if you're using an auction site, they will have just the one profile picture that they'll have on the animal. But if you want to submit pictures of sires and dams or siblings or offspring, any of those things, we will post within reason. If you're going to give me 20 pictures, I might not want to do that, but we would let you have different views. And once consignment starts coming in under this buy tab, there would be lots, would be an option you could go look at. And I'm sure none of that is there now because we don't have any up yet. But when those come in, that goes up right away and we start promoting that. Eventually, when you get it onto the actual auctioneer's site, some of the information comes over, but not as complete as we'll have on our website. So that's just a little promotion for the North Branch sale, that we try to do a lot of promotion, both with the website and in other social media places.
And just to build off of Randy's point real quick, I think or at least something that I've noticed when selling younger cattle, like, wean calves, or I guess anything under 2 years old or not mature yet, I find that people really like having lineage photos, the sires, the dams, the siblings. That becomes a lot more important when you're selling those younger cattle.
Yep, good point. So, and yes, as Randy said, as soon as we start getting things, as people start sending information in for this September consignment sale, as you can see down here, September 13th, which, oh, by the way, entries are open now. We'll start posting that information on here, and there will be a whole tab under this buy tab that'll just say lots. And we usually break it up by the type of lot. So it'll be like, open females, bred females, and cow calves or bred cows, so we'll usually break it up like that so people can see the different categories of things. So, and like Holly was mentioning, be creative in those photos, and especially with younger animals, make sure you give them something to have an idea what the animal is going to become, right? So it's one thing for you to just make a fancy advertising write-up and say, this is what it is going to be. It's another thing to show them in pictures. The last thing we had was watch outs for consigners, for first-time consigners that we had. And so, everybody has a different level of understanding of what an auction is and so forth. So I would make sure that the first thing is you understand all of the different components of it. And so there's consigner information that we have on this website as well. And so one of the things on the consigner information is to make sure that you understand deadlines. So one of the watch out is don't push things to the end. Randy talked about that earlier with your veterinarian. Veterinarians book out, at least in our area, quite a ways out, and you probably all have the same thing that we have. So make sure that you understand, like, that's a watch out, is deadlines in general. So you're not pushing things out as far as you can. That's why we're talking about this now, and you start to think about what you're going to consign, if anything, possibly to the sale, is you want to get that decided now, not on, April 31st when the entry is due, right? And then rush to try to get your veterinarian and your photos and all those things. So that's a big watch out, is don't put yourself behind the clock. Make sure that you give yourself reasonable expectations for timelines and things like that. Second thing from a watch out standpoint is don't think that you're going on doing this all on your own. There's a network, and that was part of the whole point of this Zoom. There's a network of people who have done this before. So if you have a question, we've got, a whole committee of people who have participated that can help you, that you can answer questions. Don't spin your wheels and get frustrated with something if you don't understand it. Just ask. That's from that aspect. And the third watch out is just like everything else. Make sure that when you're committing to this, you understand all the different components that you're committing. With the health requirements, transportation, all the different things. Just make sure you understand the components of the sale. The commission, right? There's an 8% commission. There's a cost to entry. There's also in our sale and many other sales are like this. There's also a reserve that you have the ability to put on your sale, on your sale animal. So make sure that you understand what that means and how to do that as well. Any other watch outs anybody has?
I think it's
Okay.
important that people realize that the sales aren't just show animals. You don't have to have show animals to put them in a sale. If you're a beef producer or a grass-fed producer and that's how you want to present yourself, that can be in any of the sales as well. At the North Central sale, we are going to require that they be halter trained and they will be led into the auction. So we can't have animals that are just range animals in there, but beyond that, they don't need to be in the show to be in the sale. And they don't need to be show type animals. They can be, whatever, but for North Central, we do want them to be registered, ACA registered.
Yeah, the phrase I always use with people whenever we're talking about shows and association stuff and so forth is less than 0.01% of all the Highland cattle that are registered have been shown or will be shown.
Mhm.
So, sales don't have to be about show cattle. There's all different kinds. Shows are just one of the tools to use to help, look at our breed and help breeders start to look at that, different cattle. And it's also a promotion tool for those breeders that decide to use it. But certainly don't let it be a deterrent if you're not showing your cattle. That doesn't mean that there isn't an audience for your cattle. Good. So the last thing I have here, and then we're just going to open it wide open for any questions, is on July 19th, the North Central Highland Cattle Association is hosting a regional picnic. It's at Winland Flats, which is my farm. It's in Princeton, Minnesota. And there is more information. This is on the North Central website, so nchca.org. You can see the URL up here in the corner. Anyone is welcome to come. You don't have to be a member of North Central. There is, if you start to scroll down, there's a link to click on for more information. It is a potluck. We've got a bunch of sponsors that are sponsoring the protein drinks and ice cream. But if you bring a dish to pass, that would be super awesome. So the other plug is, so at that event, one of the things that we will be doing is Holly will be there demonstrating photos. Because Holly takes photos. That's why I was picking on her and she was chiming in earlier. So she'll be there with her camera. We'll have cattle there, and she'll be able to help answer any questions in person on taking photos of cattle and videos and so forth. So that'll be part of our day long, starting at noon, probably run until about 5 o'clock between our speaker, lunch, and we got all kinds of people coming from Shade Heaven, NRCS, therapies, form a feed, all those folks will be there to answer questions. So with that, that was the plug for the July 19th event. Click and we hope to see you there. Any questions anybody has on anything that has to do with selling cattle at regional sales?
I think I think one thing, I know a couple people that have a problem putting cattle in sale. They don't know where they're going and they have no control. They're very particular about where their animals go and they have no control. And that for them is prohibitive as to why they're hesitant to do it.
Do you have any advice for those people, Bert?
Not really. It's we're the same way. We sell a lot of animals off the farm and we try to, make sure they're going to good places, make sure that, the people, we know the people or know of the people. I think we've all probably I had it once with a puppy I sold. Margie had it once with, a couple cows. the homes didn't turn out to be what you thought they would be. And that's disappointing. And we bring these animals into the world. They're here because of us, and now we're selling them, which is fine. We need to be able to profit off of these animals to keep moving. But at the same time, it's sight unseen. We found out 2 years in a row, we had someone from the Midwest, and Casey could tell you where they go, but he bought heifers from us and took them to the Midwest and turned around and we resold them. And the one, it took her a long time to get resold because he paid quite a bit of money for a beef animal. And I think he just had a hard time turning her around. And I was disappointed at that. That's not what I wanted for that heifer. She had been halter broke. She was tame. She was quiet. Casey had showed her. I have no idea how long she stayed and what condition she lived in until she was resold. So that was disappointing for us, but that's what happens when you put your animal in a sale. You have no control over where it goes.
Sure. Yeah, and unfortunately, that's to some extent the same case in private sales, right?
Yep.
People can tell you I've had animals come back from private sales
Yep.
because of situations similar to what you've described, or people weren't ready or willing. So as breeders, there's lots of due diligence that we can do, and at the end of the day, whether it's a private sale or whether it's a public auction, we're trusting people on the other side, just as we were trusted once to care for these
Right.
animals, and we all stand behind them. If people have problems, they'll bring them back. And on the positive route, I've met all kinds of people by selling animals on auctions, and repeat buyers that I probably would have never met if I were
Right.
just selling them privately.
Right.
So there's positive stories around it too. So
Yep.
Holly, you're on mute.
Okay, now that I'm not on mute anymore. I guess to build off of Josh's point is when I've sold like horses and dogs, I've never had that experience with cattle, fortunately. When I sell them privately, I always have them sign a private contract, and it's a buyback contract. I'm sure that's something that if you wanted to incorporate into selling your cattle, um, you certainly could. But essentially, with the horses and the dogs, if they can no longer take care of the animal, if they, plan on selling the animal, they're contractually obligated to contact you to take that animal back.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in most cases in cattle, if somebody had a situation, most of us would take them back, and probably have in some cases. So, because we all care about them too much, like Bert said, right? So,
There you go. Maha is actually our educational meeting in September. We're going to do a segment on this. Heather Lund's husband is an attorney, and he's going to run people through, a contract and what you can and what you can't put into it, and what is the best way to do it. Because everybody tries to avoid this. You hope if someone's paying the price that everyone is paying for Highlands right now, that they're going to take care of them, but my fear is all of the pet people. Everybody wants one in their backyard right now. And what happens to them when the novelty wears off? That's kind of what a lot of people fell into the mini horse trap, years and years ago. And now you can't give them away. And that worries me a little bit about our Highlands, but it is what it is.
anybody have any other questions or comments? You have to go off mute if you're asking them, because I can't see everybody's screen, but. All right. Well, we appreciate everybody jumping on tonight. Hopefully everybody was able to take one or two tidbits with them, learn a little bit about the auctions one way or the other. Hope to see some of you consign to the the North Central. Again, the entries are open, and you can go to the highlandsale.org website, and then we hope to see some of you on July 19th. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.